need to hear this even if it tightens your chest, because calling does not arrive wrapped in comfort. It arrives wrapped in truth. The uncomfortable spiritual truth is this: if you are chosen, loneliness will follow you like a shadow that refuses to leave. Misunderstanding will become familiar. Isolation will not be an accident. It will be a tool. You have wondered why rooms go quiet when you enter, why conversations stop short, why people you loved can no longer read you. This is not because you are broken, it is because you are marked. You were never designed to blend in, and the sooner you stop trying, the sooner clarity comes. Chosen ones are often introduced to solitude before they are introduced to purpose. God separates before He sends. He removes before He reveals. And this is where many falter, because no one told you that divine calling often feels like being pushed to the edge of the room while everyone else dances in the center. You scroll, you watch, you observe, and you ask yourself why your life feels quieter, heavier, more intense. This is not punishment. This is preparation. Let this settle. The crowd cannot carry what you are meant to carry. If you stayed fully understood, fully affirmed, fully celebrated by everyone, you would never develop the internal spine required for what is coming. Heaven is not cruel, but it is precise. And precision often feels like loss before it feels like power. The isolation you resent today is the furnace shaping discernment tomorrow. You are learning to hear God without noise. You are learning to stand without applause. You have also felt misunderstood deeply, painfully misunderstood. Your intentions questioned, your silence misread, your obedience labeled as weakness. And the temptation is to over-explain, to defend yourself, to chase clarity from people who do not have the capacity to see you. But chosen one, hear this clearly: God does not require the approval of those He did not consult. There are explanations you will never give, because your life will answer for you later. Silence is not always surrender. Sometimes it is restraint. This is why your path has felt narrow. This is why friendships faded without a dramatic ending. This is why some family dynamics feel strained. When oil rises, water resists. When light increases, shadows react. You are not imagining it. Spiritual elevation disrupts relational comfort. And this is where many abandon their assignment. They trade calling for companionship. Do not make that exchange. Do not do it. No matter the price. You have prayed for clarity, and instead God gave you distance. You asked for confirmation, and He allowed discomfort. That is because clarity for a chosen one is not always informational. It is transformational. You are being trained to trust God when no one claps, agrees, or understands. This is the kind of faith that moves territory. This is the kind of obedience that terrifies darkness. There is a reason your loneliness feels different from others. It is not emptiness, it is weight. You carry awareness others avoid. You see patterns others dismiss. You feel convictions others drown out. That is why casual living no longer satisfies you. That is why shallow conversations exhaust you. That is why your spirit tightens when you try to go back to who you used to be. You cannot unsee what God has shown you. You cannot unknow what heaven has whispered. And yes, it hurts. Let us not spiritualize the pain away. There are nights when you question yourself. There are mornings when obedience feels costly. There are moments when you wonder if you misunderstood God altogether. This is where the uncomfortable truth sharpens. Chosen ones are refined in obscurity long before they are trusted with visibility. If God revealed everything now, you would bleed under the weight of it. so he teaches you to stand alone first. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms, chapter 69, verse 8. I am a stranger to my brothers, an alien to my own mother's sons. This is not a verse about abandonment. It is a verse about assignment. David was anointed while still overlooked. He was chosen while still dismissed. And that anointing created distance before it created dominion. If this verse pierces you, it is because your story echoes it. You have felt like a stranger among familiar faces. That is not because you no longer belong, it is because you are being repositioned. Listen carefully now. Wednesday is approaching, and this message is not arriving by coincidence. The isolation you feel has been pressing you toward a decision point. Heaven has been watching how you respond when no one is watching. Will you retreat into bitterness, or will you deepen into obedience? Will you numb the ache, or will you let it refine you? This is not about emotion, this is about alignment. Do not confuse loneliness with abandonment. God is closer than you think, but He is training you not to depend on human reassurance. There will come a moment soon when your voice carries weight, when your presence shifts atmospheres, when people suddenly seek what they once ignored. And if your foundation is built on human validation, you will fracture under the demand. So God fortifies you now, in the quiet, in the misunderstood season. This is also why distractions have fallen flat. Things that once entertained you no longer satisfy. Old habits feel hollow. You cannot go back, and you cannot rush ahead. You are suspended between who you were and who you are becoming. That tension is holy. Do not escape it. Let it do its work. If this message is finding you, do not scroll past it. Engage with it. Anchor yourself. If you know this is speaking directly to your life, like this message, share it with someone who is also walking this narrow road, and subscribe to stay aligned with what is unfolding next. And as a prophetic act of agreement, comment 77 below, not as superstition, but as a declaration that you recognize the season and you are choosing obedience over comfort. What you have been feeling lately is not random, and it is not weakness. The unease that creeps in when everything appears calm, the restlessness that refuses to let you fully relax, the quiet sense that something is pressing closer. This is not anxiety in the way the world defines it. This is spiritual pressure. This is the signal that movement is near. Chosen ones do not receive warnings through sirens and signs. They receive them through disturbance in the soul. You have tried to explain it away. You told yourself you were just tired, just overthinking, just carrying too much responsibility. But deep down, you know that explanation does not reach the core. The feeling is too precise, too consistent, too timely. It follows you into prayer and into silence. It sits with you when you wake and lingers when you try to sleep. This is not confusion. This is alignment tension. Heaven is adjusting something, and your spirit can feel the shift before your mind understands it. Here is an uncomfortable truth most will never tell you when God is about to move you. He rarely announces it with peace first. Peace often comes after obedience, not before it. Before movement, there is friction. Before clarity, there is compression. Before elevation, there is a narrowing. What you are experiencing is the narrowing. Options that once felt available now feel closed. Paths that once seemed safe now feel wrong. You are being funneled towards something specific, and your spirit is resisting delay even if your flesh wants comfort. This is why distractions have lost their power. Entertainment feels empty, noise feels irritating, even good things feel misaligned. You are not becoming difficult, you are becoming discerning. Discernment often feels like discomfort because it removes your ability to pretend. You can no longer sit comfortably in environments that tolerate compromise. You can no longer laugh at what grieves your spirit. You can no longer move at the same pace as before. Time feels louder now. Minutes feel heavier. This is because your season is changing. Many chosen ones mislabel this phase as burnout. But burnout comes from depletion, and this is not depletion. This is pressure building behind a door that is about to open. If you were burning out, your spirit would feel empty. Instead, it feels alert, watchful, almost impatient. Something in you knows that standing still is no longer neutral. Remaining passive is beginning to feel costly. This is not fear, it is awareness. There is also a grief woven into this unrest. You are grieving versions of yourself that no longer fit. You are grieving relationships that cannot follow you. You are grieving timelines that will not happen the way you imagined. And grief, when unrecognized, often disguises itself as irritation or sadness without a clear cause. But this grief is not meant to pull you backward. It is meant to loosen your grip. You cannot carry yesterday's identity into tomorrow's assignment. You may have noticed resistance increasing around you, delays, miscommunication, doors that almost open and then shut. This is not necessarily opposition from people, it is permission from God to slow you just enough to refine your posture. Timing matters. Enter too early and you will be crushed. Enter too late and you will miss the window. So the pressure keeps you alert. It keeps you listening. It keeps you dependent. Do not mistake this season as God withholding peace. He is teaching you where peace actually comes from. Peace is not the absence of change, it is confidence in obedience. The world offers peace by removing tension. God offers peace by increasing trust. That is why this unrest does not destroy you. It sharpens you. It forces you to look inward and upward instead of outward. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 20, verse 27, the spirit of man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all his innermost parts. Your spirit is being used as a lamp right now. God is illuminating areas that have been dormant, ignored, or postponed. He is searching motives. He is searching loyalties. He is searching readiness. And when light enters places long untouched, discomfort is inevitable. But illumination is not condemnation. Exposure is not rejection. It is preparation. This is why old coping mechanisms no longer work. You cannot numb this feeling away. You cannot distract it into silence. The lamp keeps shining. Every time you try to settle back into what is familiar, something inside you tightens. That tightening is not cruelty, it is guidance. Like a guardrail on a narrow road, it prevents you from drifting off course. You are being kept. There is also urgency woven into this pressure, but not panic. Panic scatters. This urgency focuses when it keeps pulling your attention back to what matters. It asks questions you can no longer avoid. What are you obeying? What are you tolerating? What are you postponing that heaven has already addressed? These questions are not meant to accuse you. They are meant to align you. Understand this clearly. If you ignore this unrest, it will not disappear, it will intensify. Not as punishment, but as insistence. God is patient, but he is also purposeful. When a chosen one delays too long, mercy does not abandon them, but it does change tone. Gentle nudges become firm restraints. Quiet whispers become undeniable pressure. This is love with direction. You are standing in a corridor season. Doors behind you are closing, even if softly. Doors ahead of you are not yet open, but you can feel them. Corridors are uncomfortable because they offer no place to settle. They are meant for movement. The unrest you feel is your signal that lingering is no longer safe for your growth. So do not shame yourself for feeling unsettled. Do not label yourself ungrateful or faithless. This is not a failure of trust. It is evidence of sensitivity. Your spirit is alive. It is listening. And it knows that something is approaching that will require your full attention, your full obedience, and your full courage. This section does not ask you to act yet. It asks you to recognize, so to name what you are feeling accurately, to stop fighting the pressure and start learning from it. Because once you understand why the unrest is there, you stop trying to escape it and you begin to prepare for what it is pointing toward. There is a story in Scripture that many avoid because it feels too severe, too sharp, too uncomfortable for modern faith. But chosen one, this story is not written to terrify you. It is written to sober you. It is a warning wrapped in mercy, and it speaks directly to seasons like this, when obedience is no longer theoretical but demanded. In the early days of the church, there was a couple named Ananias and Sapphira. They were not outsiders. They were not unbelievers. They were part of the community that carried fire, miracles, unity, and sacrifice. They watched others sell their land and bring the proceeds honestly before God. They saw honor attached to obedience, and somewhere in their hearts, a decision formed not to disobey openly, but to partially obey while appearing fully surrendered. This is where the danger begins. Ananias sold a piece of property, just like the others. But instead of bringing the full amount as he claimed, he secretly held back a portion. Sapphira knew. They agreed together, not to steal from people but to lie in the presence of God. Outwardly, they looked aligned. Inwardly, they were divided. Their sin was not money. It was deception. It was pretending to be fully yielded while quietly retaining control. And this is why this story matters to you now. Because partial obedience is not obedience, and delayed obedience is not neutrality. It is resistance disguised as wisdom. Ananias laid the money at the apostles' feet, presenting it as the full sacrifice. And Peter, filled not with suspicion but with discernment, spoke words that cut through the appearance straight into the motive. He did not accuse him of giving too little. He confronted him for lying to the Holy Spirit. And in that moment, Ananias fell dead. Later, Sapphira entered, unaware of what had happened. Given a chance to speak truth, she repeated the lie, and she too fell. This was not God losing patience. This was God protecting purity at the foundation. The early church was being established, and God made something unmistakably clear: you cannot build a holy movement on hidden compromise. You cannot carry power while negotiating truth. You cannot walk in proximity to glory while reserving a private escape hatch for yourself. This is the part that should make your spirit go still. The sin was not weakness. It was pretense. They wanted the appearance of surrender without the cost of surrender. They wanted honor without honesty. And the judgment was immediate, not because God was cruel, but because the moment was critical. Delay would have normalized deception. Silence would have infected the body. You are not Ananias. You are not Sapphira. But the spirit behind their choice still tempts chosen ones today. It whispers, give most, but not all. Obey, but keep a backup plan. Surrender publicly, reserve privately. And here is the warning hidden in mercy: God will tolerate ignorance. But he confronts deception. He will walk patiently with immaturity. But he exposes duplicity, especially in those he has marked for influence. You are in a season where appearances no longer protect you. What you say yes to outwardly must match what you have settled inwardly. Heaven is weighing alignment, not language. God is not listening for promises. He is discerning posture. This story is not about fear, it is about clarity. You cannot move forward carrying hidden resistance. You cannot cross into the next phase while quietly negotiating the terms. God already knows what you are holding back. The question is not whether He sees it, is whether you will release it before exposure becomes instruction. The Spirit spoke through the book of Acts, chapter 5, verse 3. Ananias, why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit and to keep back for yourself part of the proceeds of the land? Notice the wording. Why has Satan filled your heart, meaning space was made. Space is never forced open. It is offered. Compromise begins small, quiet, reasonable. But once given room, it multiplies. This is why this message is arriving before Wednesday, because mercy is still speaking. You are being warned before consequence, not after. Conviction is knocking, so correction does not have to break the door down. God is not asking you to be perfect. He is asking you to be honest. Ask yourself this not in fear, but in truth. Where have you said yes outwardly while hesitating inwardly? What have you labeled wisdom that is actually delay? What portion are you quietly holding back? This is not about money. This is about obedience, about timing, about trust. Chosen one. The danger is not disobedience alone, it is delayed obedience that dresses itself in spirituality. The kind that says later, when God has said now. The kind that sings surrender while clenching control. Here is the mercy: you are being confronted privately so you do not have to be corrected publicly. You are being invited to align fully before movement accelerates. Because once momentum begins, hidden compromise becomes visible weakness. At the end of this message, I am asking you to comment one short phrase, no more than 4 words. I choose truth. This is not for performance. It is for precision. By typing it, you are not declaring perfection, you are declaring alignment. You are stating in plain language that you are choosing honesty over appearance, obedience over delay, truth over comfort. Let it be a line in the sand between what you were willing to pretend and what you are now willing to surrender. Because what comes next cannot be carried by divided hearts. Wednesday is not just another day on the calendar. It is not symbolic language meant to sound dramatic. It is a spiritual threshold, and thresholds do not negotiate. They separate before they explain. What unfolds on Wednesday is not chaos, it is clarity. A line is drawn, not by emotion, not by people, but by obedience. And once that line is drawn, standing still is no longer a safe option. Up until now, you have been allowed space to wrestle, space to question, a space to hesitate. Mercy created a wide field where you could pace, circle, doubt, and return. But that field is narrowing, not because God is impatient, but because purpose is pressing forward. There comes a moment when delay stops being developmental and starts becoming disobedient. Wednesday marks that moment. This does not mean something catastrophic must happen outwardly. Often, the most decisive shifts are invisible at first. Decisions settle internally before they manifest externally. On Wednesday, what changes first is posture. Heaven registers your alignment even before the earth reflects it. And once heaven records a decision, momentum follows whether you feel ready or not. Neutrality expires here. You cannot keep saying I'm praying about it when God has already answered. You cannot keep waiting for more confirmation when clarity has already been repeated in different forms. The sign you are waiting for is this message meeting you exactly where you are. This is not coincidence. This is divine intervention. Wednesday is not about pressure, it is about permission being revoked. The permission to delay, the permission to stay divided, the permission to stand with 1 foot forward and 1 foot back. Many chosen ones misunderstand this moment and think God is angry. He is not. He is exact. Precision feels harsh only when we want flexibility. But precision is how destiny is protected. If God allowed endless delay, you would drift into a version of life that looks safe but feels hollow. Wednesday interrupts that drift. On this day, decisions harden, not hearts but directions. What you choose to do with what you already know will matter more than anything new you might learn. Revelation pauses while obedience catches up. That is why some of you have felt like heaven has gone quiet. It has not gone silent, it has finished speaking. The next sound you hear will come after movement. Understand this: God does not drag his chosen ones forward. He waits until staying costs more than stepping. And for many of you, that balance shifts on Wednesday. Comfort will begin to feel heavier than obedience. Familiarity will start to feel restrictive. The inner tension you have carried will reach a point where decision brings relief, even if it brings fear. This is where the line is drawn. On one side is continued preparation without action, safe, contained, spiritually busy. On the other side is alignment exposed, demanding, alive. Both sides require faith, but only one produces fruit. Only one unlocks authority. Only one invites God to move with you instead of around you. Do not mistake this moment as God testing you to see if you will fail. This is God trusting you enough to let you choose. Choice is a privilege given only to those with capacity. Infants are carried. Mature sons and daughters decide. Wednesday honors your maturity by putting the decision back into your hands. There will be voices well-meaning, concerned, logical that urge caution. They will tell you to wait a little longer, to be more realistic, to protect yourself. But calling has never consulted consensus. If it did, no prophet would have spoken, no disciple would have followed, no cross would have been carried. Safety has a voice, but it is not always the voice of God. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 13, "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it." The narrow gate is not narrow because God is restrictive, it is narrow because truth is specific. And Wednesday positions you directly in front of that gate, not pushed, not forced, invited. But invitations expire. You may not feel brave. That is fine. Courage is not required, obedience is bravery is an emotion. Obedience is a decision. And decisions can be made even when emotions lag behind. God does not ask how you feel about the step, he asks whether you will take it. After Wednesday, some things will quietly fall away. Conversations, options, delays you once leaned on. This is not loss, it is pruning. Pruning always looks like reduction before it looks like increase. But what remains will feel lighter, cleaner, more aligned. You will know, even without fireworks, that something has shifted. And for those who choose alignment, acceleration follows. Not immediately loud, but unmistakably steady. Doors will open that logic cannot explain. Resistance will lessen where obedience is clear. Authority will return to places where confusion once ruled. This is how God moves order before outcome. If this message resonates with you, if you can feel the weight of Wednesday settling in your spirit, take a quiet moment after this and reflect. And if this has helped bring clarity, I encourage you genuinely to like this message. Share it with someone who may be standing at the same threshold, and subscribe so you stay connected to what unfolds next. Not out of obligation, but out of alignment. Sometimes staying connected is part of staying obedient. The line is drawn, not to exclude you, but to invite you forward. There is a cost that rarely gets preached because it does not threaten, it reveals. It is not the cost of rebellion, but the cost of delay. not the price of open disobedience, but the quiet erosion that happens when a chosen one keeps postponing what heaven has already made clear. This cost does not arrive loudly. It settles in slowly, almost politely, until one day you realize something sacred has slipped through your hands. Silence feels harmless at first. Waiting feels wise. You tell yourself you are being cautious, discerning, patient. And sometimes that is true, but there is a moment subtle, dangerous when patience expires and becomes avoidance. That is the moment this section confronts, because what is lost in delay is rarely obvious until it is gone. When a chosen one delays obedience, God does not immediately remove the calling. He does something far more sobering. He allows opportunities to pass unused, not reassigned in anger, but released in time. The window closes quietly. The invitation expires gently, and because there is no thunder, no collapse, no public consequence, the soul assumes nothing happened. But something did. You felt it as dullness where fire once burned. You noticed it as hesitation where confidence once lived. You sensed it as distance not from God's presence, but from His immediacy. Delay does not make God leave. It makes His voice easier to ignore, and ignored long enough, even holy urgency begins to sound optional. This is the real cost of silence. It is not punishment, it is forfeiture. There are assignments that require momentum. There are moments that demand timing, and when those moments pass, God does not always rewind the clock. He continues the story, but the role you were meant to play may shift. Not because you were rejected, but because the script required movement and you chose stillness. This is where grief enters, not dramatic grief, but a quiet ache. The feeling that you were meant for more, yet something feels just out of reach. You pray harder, try more, strive deeper, but effort cannot recover surrendered timing. Obedience activates what effort never can. Chosen one, this is not said to frighten you, it is said to wake you. Delay costs sensitivity. What once convicted you quickly now barely stirs you. Delay costs clarity. What once felt obvious now feels foggy. Delay costs authority. Spiritual weight diminishes when decisions are postponed too long. And the most painful cost of all delay costs trust. Not God's trust in you, but your trust in yourself. You begin to question whether you can hear Him at all. But hear this clearly even now. Mercy is speaking. The fact that this message still reaches you means the door is not slammed shut. It means God is confronting delay before loss becomes permanent. Conviction is a gift. It arrives before consequence. It interrupts before regret. You are not being accused, you are being invited back into alignment. The silence you have been sitting in was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to be a pause before obedience, not a place to build a home. God does not call you to stagnation disguised as safety. He calls you to movement that requires trust, and trust cannot grow where decisions are endlessly deferred. The cost of delay is not always visible in what you lose externally, but in what you stop becoming internally. Fire dims, hunger fades, boldness softens into caution, and one day, you realize you are protecting a life God never asked you to preserve because He was calling you to transform it. The ancient words recorded in the book of James, chapter 4, verse 17, still echo today. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him, it is sin. This verse is uncomfortable because it removes excuses, and it is not about ignorance. It is about knowing and waiting, knowing and postponing, or knowing and choosing silence. Scripture does not label this as weakness. It names it clearly. Because heaven treats delayed obedience seriously, especially in those entrusted with awareness. You know what you were told. You know what you felt confirmed. You know what keeps returning to your spirit. The question is no longer, is God speaking? The question is, what will you do with what you already heard? This is where restoration begins, not with grand gestures, but with honest decision. Delay can still be reversed while mercy is still speaking. Alignment can still be restored while conviction still stings. God is not asking you to fix everything at once. He is asking you to stop postponing the first step. And here is the hope hidden in this warning: the moment you choose movement, momentum responds. Heaven does not require perfection, only direction. The moment you step out of silence, grace rushes in to meet you. Authority begins to return. Sensitivity sharpens. The fog starts to lift. This is why this message includes a response not for engagement, but for embodiment. If you are choosing to break delay and step back into alignment, comment the number 888 below. Not as superstition, but as a marker, a decision point, a declaration that delay no longer defines your obedience, and that you are choosing movement while mercy is still speaking. What you choose now determines what you carry forward. There comes a moment when authority does not arrive from outside affirmation, but rises from internal alignment. This is that moment. Authority does not announce itself with noise. It settles with certainty. You do not feel taller, louder, or more aggressive. You feel anchored. Something in you locks into place, and confusion loses its grip. This is what happens when obedience stops being theoretical and becomes embodied. You have been prepared for this longer than you realize. Every season of restriction trained you in restraint. Every misunderstood choice strengthened your discernment. Every time you obeyed quietly while others took shortcuts. Spiritual weight accumulated even when no one noticed. Authority is never improvised. It is inherited through consistency. And now, what was forming in the unseen is ready to surface. This is where many misunderstand authority. They think it means control, dominance, or visibility. But spiritual authority is not loud, it is effective. It does not convince, it shifts. It does not argue, it establishes. When your authority activates, you stop needing to explain yourself. Your yes carries weight, your no sets boundaries. Your presence changes atmospheres without effort. You may notice that situations which once intimidated you no longer hold the same power. Not because they disappeared, but because you changed position. Authority is positional before it is functional. When you align with heaven's timing, you stop standing beneath circumstances and begin standing over assignments. This is not arrogance, it is order. There is also a calm that accompanies true authority. Not the calm of avoidance, but the calm of clarity. You are no longer scattered between options. You are no longer negotiating with every voice. You move with intention. Even your pauses have purpose. This is how you know authority is active. It simplifies your internal world even when the external world remains complex. Understand this: authority activates when obedience becomes immediate, not perfect immediate. When God speaks and you respond without prolonged negotiation, something shifts. Heaven entrusts more territory to those who move when instructed. Delay weakens authority and alignment strengthens it. And you are stepping into a phase where hesitation will no longer dominate your decision-making. This authority is not just for you. It is for what you are meant to influence. People will begin to sense safety around you not because you have answers, but because you have alignment. Others will feel exposed not because you accuse, but because truth rests on you. You will notice resistance increase in some spaces not because you change tone, but because authority disrupts disorder. Do not be surprised if old patterns try to reassert themselves. Authority is tested before it is trusted. You may feel pressure to shrink, to soften, to retreat into familiarity. This is not a sign that you are failing. It is confirmation that your position has changed. Darkness does not react to potential, it reacts to activation. What you carry now requires stewardship. Authority grows when it is exercised with humility. You are not called to dominate, but to establish order. You are not called to impress, but to be faithful. Authority is sustained not by intensity, but by consistency. The same obedience that activated it will be required to maintain it. There is also a warning here, gentle, but firm. Do not confuse authority with urgency. You do not need to rush. You do not need to prove anything. Authority allows you to move at heaven's pace, not the world's pressure. When you hurry, you risk stepping outside alignment. When you wait without obedience, you risk stagnation. Authority teaches you when to move and when to stand. This is also the season where discernment sharpens. You will sense when to speak and when silence is stronger. You will recognize doors that look good but feel wrong. You will no longer be impressed by access alone, you will look for assignment. This discernment is part of your authority. It protects you from unnecessary battles and preserves energy for the ones that matter. The enemy fears activated authority because it cannot be negotiated with. Compromise may silence conviction, but it cannot silence authority once it is established. That is why obedience was contested so heavily earlier. If you had delayed longer, this activation would have been postponed. But you chose alignment, and alignment unlocks what striving never could. You may not see immediate external validation. That is intentional. God often allows authority to settle privately before displaying it publicly. Public recognition too early can distort posture. So for now, trust the internal shift. Pay attention to the way fear has lessened. Notice how decisiveness has increased. Observe how you no longer need permission to obey what you already know. This authority also brings responsibility. What you tolerate now will shape what you lead later. Small compromises erode authority faster than open opposition. Stay clean in motive. Stay clear in intention. Stay close in relationship with God. Authority disconnected from intimacy becomes brittle. Authority rooted in intimacy becomes enduring. The ancient words recorded in the letter to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 19. Speak into this moment, for the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. Notice the language, revealing, not creating. What is coming forth was already there. It was formed, trained, tested, and refined. Now it is being revealed. Authority is not being added to you. It is being uncovered, and creation responds not to noise, but to order restored. As you move forward, resist the urge to measure progress by speed. Measure it by alignment. Authority matures as obedience remains steady. You will grow into it, not out of it. And when challenges arise, as they will, you will discover that what once overwhelmed you now submits to clarity and prayer. You are no longer waiting to become ready. Readiness has arrived through obedience. Authority has activated. And from here, movement will no longer feel forced, it will feel directed. This is the final call before movement, not because God is finished speaking forever, but because this phase of speaking is ending. What comes next will not arrive as another explanation. It will arrive as consequence, momentum, and manifestation. Words have carried you this far. From here, alignment must carry you the rest of the way. What follows will not wait for comfort. Momentum rarely asks permission from fear. Once alignment locks in, life begins responding at a different speed. You may feel stretched, but you will also feel supported in ways you cannot yet explain. This is how movement confirms itself through grace meeting action. You are not stepping into uncertainty alone. Heaven moves with those who move in truth. Support may not always look familiar, but it will be sufficient. Resources, people, and timing will converge not because you chased them, but because obedience positioned you where provision could find you. Do not measure what comes next by ease, but by meaning. Some days will challenge you, others will strengthen you, but all will refine you. When alignment leads, even resistance becomes instruction. And you will look back at this moment, recognizing it as the point where everything quietly changed. You are standing at the edge of what follows Wednesday. Not hypothetically, actually. The internal decisions you have been forming, the quiet resolve that has been settling, the clarity that has sharpened instead of softened, this is the preparation. God has not rushed you, but He has not coddled you either. He has treated you like someone He trusts with weight. What follows after Wednesday depends on what you have already decided in your heart. For those who chose alignment, movement begins. Not always loud, not always instant, but undeniable. Life starts responding differently. Resistance shifts. Favor shows up in subtle but strategic ways. You notice that what once required effort now responds to authority. You are not striving anymore, you are stewarding. And stewardship carries peace even when responsibility increases. For those who hesitate, stagnation follows not as punishment, but as pause. The story does not end, but it waits. And waiting without obedience is heavier than obedience without certainty. God does not abandon, but He does not override your will. He honors your choice even when it delays your destiny. This section is not here to divide you into groups. It is here to remind you that choice is real. Heaven does not deal in vague intentions. It responds to posture. And posture is revealed in movement, not in language. You may still feel small. That is fine. God has never required you to feel powerful only to be faithful. Most of the people God used significantly felt inadequate right up until obedience met grace. Confidence is not the entry requirement. Availability is. And understand this clearly: what you are stepping into is not about personal success. It is about responsibility. God does not elevate to reward. He elevates to position. What He places in your hands is meant to bless others, shift environments, and restore order where chaos has lingered too long. That is why the preparation was intense. That is why the pruning was precise. If you have felt the weight of this message across these sections, it is because your spirit recognized it before your mind could explain it. Something in you knows this was not just content, it was confirmation. And confirmation always demands response. There will be days ahead when you are tempted to doubt what you decided here. When fear whispers that you moved too fast, that you misunderstood, that you should retreat. That is when you remember this moment, not emotionally, but positionally. You remember that you chose alignment when delay was still an option, and that choice matters. You are not alone in this movement. God never isolates His chosen ones forever. He isolates them for formation. Connection returns at the right time, with the right people, for the right purpose. What is removed now is not taken to leave you empty, but to make room for what can actually walk with you into the future, as was spoken in the sacred texts of old, in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 19. I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live. This verse is not dramatic, it is definitive. God places options before you, then honors your choice. He does not manipulate, He does not coerce, He invites. And that invitation is what you are responding to now. If this message has helped you see clearly, if it has anchored something that was already forming inside you, I invite you genuinely to like this message and share it with someone who may be standing at the same threshold. And if you have not already, subscribe so you stay connected to what unfolds next. Not because of a channel, but because consistency matters when movement begins. Staying connected helps you remain grounded as momentum builds. This is not the end, it is the release point. You are not stepping into chaos, you are stepping into order. You are not losing safety, you are gaining alignment. And you are not behind, you are right on time, because you chose when it mattered. What follows Wednesday will reveal what you decided before it arrived. Before you leave this moment, do not rush to label it or box it into understanding. Some messages are not meant to be fully processed immediately. They are meant to echo, to linger, to resurface later when life places you in a situation that suddenly makes everything clear. This may be one of those moments. Nothing here demanded that you act publicly or prove anything outwardly. What mattered most has already happened quietly inside. A shift of awareness, a settling of truth, a recognition that something in your life is no longer negotiable, even if you cannot yet name exactly how it will unfold. That is enough for now. You do not need to explain this to anyone. You do not need to convince yourself you fully understand it. Alignment often arrives before articulation. Clarity unfolds in motion, not in stillness. Let the next steps reveal themselves naturally, without force, without panic, without retreat. If this message stays with you, let it stay. If it returns to your thoughts later this week, let it return. Pay attention to what feels lighter and what feels heavier after this point. Life has a way of confirming alignment through peace, not pressure. And if at some point you feel moved to acknowledge this message by liking it, sharing it with someone who might need it, or simply holding it quietly, that choice is yours. There is no obligation here. Truth does not require promotion to remain true. It only requires honesty to remain alive. What matters most is what you do when no one is watching. How you listen, how you choose, how you move forward when comfort and calling no longer point in the same direction. This ending is open because your story is still unfolding. Nothing is sealed shut, nothing is forced. You are simply aware now, and awareness, once received, becomes responsibility but also freedom. Take what belongs to you from this moment, leave the rest behind and walk forward at the pace obedience sets for you.